Hey, peace and blessings to your family. Shalom to you. This is Zion. I have been meditating all morning and I will continue to after this video on the life of Moses and how we can actually draw from that ourselves. It doesn't make any sense in reading the Bible if we can't make it applicable to ourselves. What does that story have to do with me? It happened thousands of years ago, but what does that have to do with me now? What can I get out of this? What is God really saying to me? And so the word Moses in Hebrew means drawn out. And so that means that when there was a hit that was placed on Moses' life, along with the other Hebrew boys at that time, by the administration of Pharaoh, that Moses was safely placed into a basket in the Nile River to camouflage him and to hide him out of the view of Egyptians' assassins to take him out. So he was drawn out. But he was not just drawn out of the Nile. He was drawn out to draw others out. And as we begin to fast forward this whole thing, Moses, out of anger, defended one of his brothers, his Hebrew brothers, against the abuse of an Egyptian, and he murdered him. Now, regardless if it was intentional murder or unintentional murder, because now Moses was highly trained and skilled as an Egyptian soldier. He grew up as Pharaoh's grandson, so he knew all about the ancient mysteries and all that stuff. But he was very smart, very articulate. He was half politician and half soldier. So he had a military background. So he understood the art of self-defense. And he took that cat out and buried him, buried the evidence. And so now you have Pharaoh, along with his administration, they have placed a bounty on his head. Wanted dead or alive. If we capture you alive, then we're going to bring you back into the court of law to try you and to kill you, because that's a capital offense. But if we happen to catch you and kill you, well, it was street justice. And so now Moses is on the run, and he finds himself on the backside of the desert. He met God, and we know the story. But what I really want to focus on, I want us to focus on as we begin to just kind of internalize this, and I'm doing it for myself. Every Moses has a Pharaoh. Though Moses, before he became a fugitive of the law, he was free physically. He was free. He was considered as Pharaoh's grandson. He had everything at his fingertips. He had money. He had power. He had influence. He had prestige. Everything that a man could desire, he had. He was famous. But now he finds himself being infamous. And so he had the freedom. He had everything that any man would want and more. But even though that he was free, he was still a slave. He was a slave to a system and to a culture and to a norm that he was never called to, but to be drawn out to draw others out that were slaves. Now, if you look at the life of Moses, before him becoming a fugitive, he was a free man. And the people that were under him, which were his people, they were slaves. They were incarcerated. They were forced into labor in building a kingdom that they could not benefit from. So here is Moses, a free man, yet he was more bound and incarcerated than the ones who were under him that were physically incarcerated, because Moses was mentally incarcerated and spiritually incarcerated until he was called out by being drawn out, which matches his name. So here he is, a fugitive from the law. And now the same God that drew him out of the waters, drew him out of Egypt, drew him out of a system, drew him out of his homeboys, his surroundings, everything that he knew and that he loved and he was acquainted with. He drew him out of that and drew him into a desert, a desolate place, a lonely place, a barren place, a depressive, a place of depression, to meet God. He didn't meet God in the plush, grandiose, mammoth castle and estate of splendor and majesty of the Egyptian administration. He didn't meet God there. You would think that he would have, but God wasn't in the building. Instead, oftentimes, God will allow us to be drawn out of the comfortability of life, to be drawn in to a place that is so uncomfortable and so lonely and so low, just to meet him. You know, Apostle Paul said that God takes the foolish things to confound the wise, and the weak things to confound the things that are mighty, and the rejected and the obese things God has already chosen. And so then after choosing him and meeting him where you wouldn't think that God would meet you at that low place, then he immediately gave him an identity and empowered him to go right back to the place that he was drawn out from. You know, oftentimes in God time, I'm learning that the very places that he has drawn us out of, that we suffered pain, anguish, shame, rejection, grief, and loss. In due time, when we are healed and when we are ready, he will draw us back into that place to draw others out that they can also be free. And here we see Moses, a fugitive. His picture, in all intents and purposes, was posted in every government facility, in every post office, wanted dead or alive. He had a criminal record, a fugitive of the law. Yet God had already chosen him to represent the kingdom of heaven against the kingdom of Satan in the form of Pharaoh, to command Pharaoh to let God's people go. I tell you that wherever there is a Moses, there is a Pharaoh. Every Moses has a Pharaoh that wants to keep you from the greatness of God, a Pharaoh that wants to keep us in bondage, a Pharaoh that wants to keep us in addiction, a Pharaoh that wants to keep us bound by our past, a Pharaoh that wants to keep us in a place and in a state and moreover in a condition of being a victim and always worrying about what other people think and what other people say about you, as if their opinion about you supersedes the Lord of hosts who made you. God wants to draw us out of that mentality, draw us out of that bondage, and draw us out of that type of mental, emotional, and spiritual enslavement in order to draw us to a place of being up close and personal with him, that he can brand us with heaven's identity and give us heaven's backing and authority, and in due time of healing and freedom, to draw us back to that place to command Pharaoh to let my people go. You will no longer hold me hostage here. You will no longer hold me hostage in here. And I command you, not by my authority, but backed by the authority of the Lord of hosts, Yahweh himself, I command you. This is not negotiable. I command you to let God's people go. And so I just say all that to say this, is that every Moses does have a Pharaoh. And we have a Pharaoh. Whatever that Pharaoh is, God has drawn us out in a due time to draw us back in, to tell whatever that is holding us hostage and has been holding us hostage for many years. Your reign is now over and your hold has now been broken. Just want to share that with you. I'm going to continue to meditate on it, man. And I just want to encourage you, as I encourage myself, that God has drawn you out to represent him, to tell every Pharaoh in your life that your time is up. Peace and blessings to you. Love you to life.